morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Let's talk about Niger, the coup in Niger, its front page. Yesterday we saw a special emissary, according to the newspapers late in the day, that the former Emir of Kano and other eminent people had actually gone on a mission to Niger and had met with the coup plotters. Okay, as of this morning, again, according to the newspapers, we suddenly see that, well, something has changed in Niger, and now they've actually imposed a new government. They have actually appointed someone. We're still trying to get used to this name. They now have a prime minister, and the prime minister is Mr. Ali Mahaman Lamine Zaine. He'll be leading a 21-member government, and we are told, according to the news, that the military will retain defense and internal affairs. I think that's something like the Interior Ministry to us. Okay, so this is where the narration of the situation in Niger has got to. It wasn't quite there when we went to bed last night. And our guest this morning, first of all, Mr. Ahmad Sajoh. He's the former Commissioner for Information in Adamawa State. A fine morning to you, sir.
A fine morning to you, sir. Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And Mr. Femi Odere. Mr. Odere is a journalist and is a political affairs analyst as well. Again, Femi, a fine morning to you.
A fine morning to you. Good morning, Yori. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Let me start with Mr. Sajoh. Both gentlemen, by the way, one is happy to say they're reaching us from the Abuja studio. You might not have known the difference, but I just felt I'd chip that in. So, Mr. Sajoh, give me your impressions, please, on where we are at now. We were going to look at, this coup, is it going to be diplomacy or war? But the admixture of the circumstances and the situation was different last night from what it is this morning. So what would you say? Is it going to be diplomacy or war? Mr. Sajoh?
I totally understand the situation. We have a duty as a people to always protect and promote constitutional order in any country, especially our neighbor as strategic as Niger. But I also understand that, war with Niger at this point in time, either a direct war between us and Niger or a proxy war, having the Western powers and Russia also coming into fray, will not be in the strategic interest of any of our peoples. And so I think we need to look at the map of Niger. You can see Niger has borders with Algeria, with Libya, with Chad, with Nigeria, with Benin Republic, with Burkina Faso, and with Mali. And of all these countries, from the statement issued by the Algerians, there's a likelihood that they will oppose any armed conflict in Niger. Mali and Burkina Faso had already said they would join on the side of Niger. And that makes it a bit difficult, and nobody knows where Chad stands in this matter. The president of Chad was in Niger, but nobody knows where he stands on this matter. So we may decide to go into war and realize that we are, fighting ourselves as Africans. And I think the strategic interest of Nigeria as a country is to promote Pan-Africanism. And so anything that can bring consensus within the African continent between restoring constitutional order and also, protecting our strategic interests as individual countries, I think we should do it. I know that the president of the country is the leader of ECOWAS. He is bound to promote whatever resolutions are taken by ECOWAS, but he should also understand that he is the commander-in-chief of our own Nigerian armed forces, that whatever he can do to avoid bloodshed is the best he can do for our people. We should also look at the strategic interests of Nigerian people, especially those that are bordering Niger, and even the Nigerian people themselves. and make sure that we exhaust all avenues of diplomacy. And even if we have to go into armed conflict, it has to be an inevitable situation, and I don't think an inevitable situation ever existed in this kind of case. We can still resolve this impasse through diplomacy, and we should aim to do it through diplomacy. We should aim to understand that our strategic interests as a people, our own armed conflict internally here had relied tremendously on Niger. We have a lot of IDPs from Nigeria in Niger, or they are refugees in this case. We have a lot of, Niger had not allowed both the bandits and the insurgents in the northeast and the bandits in the northwest to have safe haven in their country. These are all issues that we should look at as our own strategic interest before we take any decision to go into armed conflict with Niger.
Indeed. Thank you very much, sir. So, as you say, Niger is an ally, and that we have to, be very cognizant of as we move forward. It's just that there's a set of unfortunate circumstances. And Mr. Femi Odire, as you know, the body, ECOWAS, has a zero appetite for coups, as was stated, interestingly enough, even though he couldn't have known anything about it at the time, when President Tinubu, as chair, when he assumed the chairmanship of ECOWAS, he was speaking about coups and how Africa had to rally together and say no to coup, no to unconstitutional governments. And then, lo and behold, we have what we have. Now, the situation happened in Niger. I think there's a sort of a mistaken commentary that has started to be corrected in the past couple of days, I think, and that is that something about Nigeria. It's not Nigeria, it's ECOWAS. But people, because the chairman is our president, you have heard some commentary going along the lines of Tinubu this and Tinubu that. It's a joint ECOWAS thing. Now, I want to ask you, Femi, what do you think of the state of affairs now? Because whatever it might have been yesterday morning, for example, in your mind, I'm sure the dynamics have changed now that there's a prime minister, Ali Lamine Zaine. He's now been appointed. What do you think? How does this affect the ground now?
Well, thanks, Yori. You see, since the Niger coup happened about probably 16 days ago, it has actually thrown up a lot of controversies that, unfortunately, the media is not really talking about. And the way I look at it, I have about probably 5 to 6 components of this controversy. But unfortunately, only one of these 5 to 6 components is being discussed, and for some very unfortunate, if not ulterior motive. And one, if I have to summarize the 5 or 6 components, I would say the first one that is being talked about, unfortunately, is what I describe as trying to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. And the second component of this is what I see as the role of the Senate in this whole controversy. And nobody has really, talked about it. And the third, it seems to me, has actually thrown up the question as to who is truly a Nigerian. Because we've been hearing all these opinion, motives, and all of that. And it begins to give the impression that we actually have 2 countries. And that's why I said this component actually can be described as who is truly a Nigerian. And the fourth one is the role of democracy in all of this. And then the fifth one, to me, is the world that is now beginning to be a multipolar world. Remember, we used to have a unipolar world in terms of the United States and the former Soviet Union actually holding sway in the rest of the country. And then from there, it became a bipolar is what I mean in terms of the United States and Russia. Then it became a unipolar world where the United States was the only dominant power with the rest of the world. And now we have a multipolar world where we have different power centers coming into play. France is in the mix, India is in the mix, China is in the mix. And of course, the sixth one is what I see as the soldiers of fortune, and these private armies who are actually making incursions into the African continent. To me, these are what we ought to be talking about. And if you want me to expatiate on all of these 5 or different components, the first one, as you rightly pointed out, is that people have actually done a very disservice to the president of Nigeria, and that is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, by saying that he is the one who wants to go to war. He's not the one who wants to go to war.
I beg your pardon. I got to interrupt you for a moment. Thank you very much. So sorry about that. Stay with us, please. I'll take a quick break. We'll be right back to continue with this conversation.